So hi, Jeanneke Scholtens. Thanks for joining us
Hi,
today. It's great to speak to you. So,
thank you.
Jeanneke, so you're the owner of Future Agency, webshop called What's in Store for the Future, and writer of the book Holy Fuck. So excited to hear more about all of those projects and explore identity with you. So, should we start with the first question?
Yeah, of course.
So, how do you explore the theme of identity in your book Holy Fuck? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would like to mention that I wrote the book together with Mabel Nummerdor. So she's my colleague and friend, also a future explorer.
Hmm.
And my own agency is called Buro Zurro. We have it with 4 researchers and strategists here. Mabel isn't part of that, but we came together to write the book Holy Fuck, and I'll
Right.
show it to you.
Oh, amazing.
It's like our design baby we wrote together, and this is her.
Yeah.
So because I'm alone here, I would like to show her. And we wrote the book about Holy Fuck. It's like 7 time frames, and each time frame we move further along in the future. And it's about the way we have sex. The first chapter is called Sextremisms. It's about the way we have sex in all kinds of varieties that are extreme. So on the one side you have raw sex with BDSM, and on the other side we have tantric sex and slow sex. So you see there are a lot of things on the opposite trend-wise. And the second chapter takes us to the love-evolution, the new kinds of relationships we have because of, well, technology, aging, individualism. You see all kinds of new sorts of relationship, well, happen. Everybody has something. Somebody maybe want to be alone for a longer time, so they choose a single life. Another one wants to have children with 4 friends. Everything is possible now. It's not that you can only have a relationship with 2 people and that will last all a lifetime long. So and then we move to gender, we move to how we procreate, how we make children, how we can, well, kind of grow them in the laboratory, how you can even have a child in a baby machine in the future, so an external uterus. So if you look at identity, sex is something that is so intrinsic. It's the first thing about humanity is that we have to procreate, that it's our instinct, and it's changing because of the times we live in. It's always changing, so it's always a part of identity that's moving on, that's changing in because of a lot of trends that are happening. So every chapter, I think, is about identity. So Holy Fuck is just a whole journey, an expedition through human identity.
Amazing. I can't
Yeah,
wait to
I
read more of it. That's amazing. So what do you think you learned about identity when you were younger, and how do you think that influenced the book?
Well, first of all, Mabel and I wrote in the start of the book that we are both female, white, upper class, I think. So if you look at identity, we're on the privileged side of the world. And that's what we wrote, because it's really, we also asked a lot of students to investigate the future for us, because they have a totally different view about the world than we did. We are like in our 40s, we have children. But when I grew up, I was told that I could do anything. I could become anything. Dreams are to be followed, goals are to be achieved. And well, everything is possible. And I grew up with 3 bigger brothers, and at the dinner table, you had to stand your ground. You had to bang your fist on the table if you wanted to say something. So you had to really ask, or maybe even shout for attention to be heard. And I think that's what really what was the main thing that made me who I am now, and that I wrote the book. And it's also really screamy. It's in your face, like, holy fuck, you have to read this. So I think this is part of my identity, like growing up, you have to be there. But I was also taught that we have to, everybody's different. Everybody has a different identity. Everybody has a different framework or a different way, a value system, because they grew up in a different family, in a different background. So I was really taught that everything is fine, everything is okay. You should listen to each other. You should try to understand each other. So I think I grew up really tolerant, open-minded, and I think that's what you see in Holy Fuck as well, because not everybody who heard the title was really open-minded about it. We tried to get a lot of images from America, for instance, and because of the title Holy Fuck, they wouldn't cooperate, a lot of companies.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
come
that's
around.
a shame.
Yeah.
But I think the purpose for my work is to not only to talk about the future of sex, but also to talk about the future of religion, and to talk about the future of death, that are well, the main items in my work, is to talk about items that are so closely linked to our human identity, that are so important, but also so difficult to talk about. They're really taboo issues, taboo talks.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to do, is to open up the conversation, to start about, to talk about things that are a bit difficult. And it's easy to talk about them from, how do you call it, level, meta level?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, meta, a point of view that's a bit, and that's the future is beautiful for that, to talk about the future of sex and talk about the implications they have for our life now. That's a beautiful way to spice up the conversation and to open it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And which, but you mentioned that you obviously your upbringing and your life so far has obviously contributed to the book. What would you say are the most important influences for your work generally, the book or wider than your book?
Well, if you look at Holy Fuck, our main influences are like designers, scientists, philosophers, all kinds of different people with different backgrounds. Because I don't know if you ever heard the quote by Oscar Wilde: "Everything in this world is about sex, except sex.
Yeah.
Sex is about power."
Yeah,
it's everybody knows it. But it's not only about power; it's also about procreation. It's about leisure. It's about addiction. It's about self-esteem. It's about self-empowerment. It's about advertising. It's about entertainment. So we normally we in our work, we're checking for the future of sports, or the future of marketing, future of pets even. And what we saw was that in whatever subject we were researching on, there were trend signals regarding sex. So everywhere we looked, we saw sex. That was the moment that we thought, we have to write a book about the future of sex. There's a story to be told. And so we looked at designers, at scientists, we went to conferences, we spoke to a lot of professors. So I think the influences are all around us. It's like opening up a newspaper and it's about sex. Put on your television, it's about sex. Everything is about sex. That's kind of the point. So when we were writing it, we thought, oh, somebody else is doing this as well, and somebody else is seeing this as well. But, well, luckily nobody did. Well, they saw, but they didn't write a book about it.
And so I guess if you could describe Holy Fuck in one word, I mean, I know that you mentioned that you're drawing on a lot of different trends and areas, and obviously sex is very pervasive. But if you could describe the book in one word, what would that word be, do you think?
Well, I think for me, as well as for Mabel, life-changing. And that's a big word, because it was life-changing for us, because we have a life before Holy Fuck and a life after Holy Fuck, you know. Sure. Before Holy Fuck, we weren't that well famous. How do you call it? Nobody knew us exactly as a future explorer. And after Holy Fuck, we got a lot of media attention. We still do. It's like 2 years ago it came out. It came out in 2018, and we've been on different television shows in Holland. We have been on really a lot of main stages. We've been talking with the audience about sex. It really changed me about the way I talk about sex. It changed Mabel. It changed us together as a duo. But it's also a book that should be life-changing for everybody who reads this, because it has a question about the future implications. It's a lot about what if. You know, you can't predict the future, but you can ask a lot of questions about the future. So if there was an external uterus, would we use it? For example, if you have a premature born child, of course you will use a uterus that's external, that's robotic, that will keep your baby safe, of course. But when it's there and you don't have a premature child, but maybe you don't want to get pregnant yourself, but you're like, I don't want to I don't want to be fat. I don't want to be big. I don't want to carry it myself. Maybe I'm better off. Can we also use the machine then? Or is that just... So we try to look at bigger questions and then ask ourselves, is this something that we want? Is this something that we should do? And we're not here to answer the question. And Mabel and I are not going to say, yes, you should, or maybe no, you shouldn't. But we would like to ask the question, so you think about it. And what do you think? And that's what I think is life-changing on the part for the audience, is think about what kind of implication it has for you, what you want to do in the future of sex for yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely very provocative, isn't it? It raises a lot of questions and points out things that maybe people haven't realized that that they're doing or that other people are doing, and it brings everything together in a way that you can, as you say, get that meta sort of bird's eye view of society and see what's happening.
And so it shapes human identity in the future. Because we ask the questions now, and it's not, the question is not, can we do what we want? The question is really, do we want to do what we can? So there's a lot of technology. Everything can happen. You can date through technology. You can have sex through technology. You can give birth through technology. It's not a question if we can. Yes, of course we can. But do we want to?
Yeah.
Is it the best choice after all? I don't know.
Yeah, it's putting the mirror up to us, isn't it? And saying,
that's a good way of saying
you want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah,
brilliant. And I guess so you've mentioned different aspects of identity in terms of obviously sex being very pervasive, lots of different aspects of our identity. What for you do you think identity in quotes means for us?
Well, I've thought about that, of course, because your magazine is called Inclusive or Inc. I don't know how you pronounce the name of the magazine. How do you?
Inc is fine.
Yeah. And I thought identity is normally about me, my identity, but I think identity is more about us and the way we form identity together. So for me, identity is about empathy and about respect and tolerance. So kind of what I talked about earlier, but about understanding each other's backgrounds. And you see a lot of people going, it's black or white, it's Trump or Biden. It's it's also polarized. There's so many black and white and so little gray. Like there's like 50 shades of gray in the sex phrase. But I like to see identities for me is about try to look in somebody else's life, try to think like they do. I don't believe really in principles. I don't really believe in thinking I'm right or you're right. I think from your point of view, you're right. From my point of view, maybe I'm right. And if we talk to each other, we can try to understand. You have to listen at first. And try to understand each other. And I think for me, identity is changing the whole time because I change, you change all the time. And together we grow into what we want to be tomorrow or in a few years. So it's fluid.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting picking up on Holy Fuck, as we say, putting the mirror up to people. I guess if identity is very fluid, as you say, and what other people are doing might impact our identity and vice versa, then it becomes a very collective, from your point of view, it's a very collective thing.
Yes,
then.
Yes it is. I have an example, if I can give it to you, and it's not about sex, it's about the future of religion. I talk about it a lot in front of churches. So I'm standing in front of a church and there's a whole religious community and they're listening to me. And I'm talking about the future of church, and I'm talking about a lot of people who won't come to church anymore. And that's not really a message they like to hear, of course, but I also give them future expectations that are a bit more positive. But there was one man in the audience and he sat there, and after I spoke, I had like half an hour, he sat there and he was like this and he said to me, it all starts with God and it ends with God. So he was really close and he was like, I don't like your talk and this is it for me. I'm in my church and you're here pronouncing something I don't even want to hear. And one woman stood up and she said, I came here tonight because this was a secular speech and I really want to be involved in this church, but I don't believe in God. And if you say this, sir, to me, I don't feel welcome here anymore, and I don't want to come to the church. But there was just you had the attack on Bataclan in Paris, you know, and she said, now everybody on Facebook is putting a French flag in their profile picture. And I don't want to do that. I want to come to the church. I want to talk to people who are like-minded, who want to talk this over, because I don't understand what's happening. And I want to try to understand what's happening. And then he slowly, you saw that that man soften up a bit. And they came into conversation together. And they were trying to understand each other. And so conversation started, and something that first was a taboo was now not so much a taboo anymore. Something happened over there. That's what I like. That's what I think for me is the changing of identity at that time. So I think that's the best example for me where the magic happened.
So sort of opening up people's minds to hear what others might think and feel in a way that then their identity is open and they can decide what they want to do with that new information. Is sort of
Yes.
Yeah. So that's great. It's a brilliant example. Thanks for sharing that. That was great. And so I guess we're talking about, you mentioned Biden or Trump. Obviously, we're on the eve of the election, and there's obviously a lot of things going on at the moment with the pandemic and all sorts of things. How would you say that contemporary society is shaping our identity? So I guess not maybe looking as much at the future at the moment, but sort of what's happening now. How's that shaping our identity in your view?
What's happening now is shaping our identity. Well, I think that's the problem with the polarizing of that's what we just talked about. We shouldn't be polarized as much. What I really think is what I wanted to, maybe it's kind of a different approach than what you're asking for, but maybe I can show the example from the book. We have the anthropologist Gail Rubin. I don't know if you heard of it. In the 80s, the anthropologist made the charm cycle, and in the inner circle you can see what's seen as normal and healthy sex. It's heterosexual, married, monogamous, to procreate, free, coupled, in a relationship, same generation, at home, no pornography, vanilla sex. I don't know if you ever heard of vanilla sex.
Yeah.
And you see outside of the circle, remember this is in the 80s, eh?
Yeah.
Outside of the circle, it's for money, in a group, casual sex, pornography, homosexual. Here it's still it's this is mainstream, this is not. And you see, well, when time changes, something from the inner circle comes from the outer circles comes to the inner circle. So now homosexual is normal, it's mainstream. You know, pornography is mainstream. So you see, what was first seen as sinful now isn't that sinful anymore. And that's what time does to us, and that's what you see shifting also. What's also fluid. And I think a lot of things, only because of digitalization or aging or individual, you know, the bigger trends, you see a lot of happening. You see that we form other relationships. If you want to divorce at 65 and start a new marriage at 75, do it. It's okay. So it's not that you, in earlier days, you were married, you were expected to stay together your whole life and have a big family. Now we hop from one to another. So I don't think that's really answering your question, but it is about.
It is. I think from what I got from your answer was that our identity is sort of expanding in the ways that we feel we can express our identity or our life choices. So I guess in contemporary society versus back in the 80s or any other time, we
can do a lot more.
The circle is expanding, isn't it, of what is of what our forms of identity can be. So yeah, that was a great answer.
And I think the what you see now with Trump, it's like the patriarch society. It's like the final blow, and afterwards this will. Yeah, I think it's really it's the final blow, and then it's over with the patriarch society.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, exactly.
So I guess looking at the future then, so I know it's sort of a similar question, but now versus maybe say in the next 5 years, how do you think our identity might change? So that circle that we looked at, what could that look like in 5 years, for example?
Well, I think gender has a big topic in it. Gender is also really fluid. So a lot of, I don't know if you can say that all the different genders are mainstream yet. I know in Holland we have like a big store, Hema, and they don't sell they don't sell clothes for baby girls and baby boys anymore. So first we used to have blue and pink.
Yeah.
And now they only have children's clothes. So you can't choose boy or girl anymore. And if you go with the train, they don't say anymore ladies and gentlemen. They say fellow travelers. So you see a lot of signs now that the gender issue is becoming mainstream. That you can choose your identity yourself. You can choose your gender yourself. Maybe on your passport you can choose. I think that will become more and more mainstream. Also, the different choices you have in a variety of relationships will become bigger. Maybe in the next 5 years, you will see more examples of people in a relationship with more than two.
Okay.
So, like polygamous or polyamoric. And also because of digitalization, and because if you have on Tinder, you date 2 people this week, you date 2 people next week. It's becoming more mainstream. And I think also technology is changing the way we interact. And now you see a lot of skin hunger because of COVID, of course. And I think the way technology is well glued to our skin is even becoming more glued to our skin. But also we are in dire need of each other. So we're going to be much more intimate. We're going to put away some of the technology and going to embrace each other more and more after COVID, of course.
Yeah.
But that's something you will see as well.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, thank you. And I guess the last question, just to wrap up, would just be whether you have any upcoming projects that you can share with us. Anything you're working on?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're in the middle of something because Holy Fuck is already 2 years ago, and then the year after we presented The Future of Death, and now this year, every year we do a big research project with a whole team, and this year we have pleasure, and the research is called Pleasure, Please. And it has everything to do with the fact that I stopped drinking alcohol.
Right.
And like a year and a half ago, and I was like, what's going to give me pleasure now? If I can't have that bottle of wine or that first glass of wine, what's my newest pleasure? How am I going to treat myself or maybe numb myself? So I was really in dire need of pleasure. That's why it's called Pleasure, Please. But it's really about the society we live in, the instant gratification, the fact that we want to put everything in our mouth, nose, touch. And maybe the search is changing from instant gratification to a desire for desire itself. And we're going from pleasure to happiness, to a bit of danger, to a bit of purpose. And we're looking into that and all the trend signals we can find, and we're really looking at brands, how brands can use it. So how can you be a pleasure brand? How can you be a happiness brand or a purpose brand? And how can you use the trends that we see? So it's like it's an research with a workshop for companies.
Oh, brilliant. And how does that sort of link in with identity, do you think, in terms of if we're changing how we seek pleasure? Do you think that's having an impact on, or will have an impact on, our identity and in a way that we express ourselves or the way that we act? Perhaps?
Well, I think there's going to be a bit of common, I don't know the English word, but I think the hyper individualistic society, we've been there, we've done that. It's like we're searching for the hedonistic high all the time, the dopamine shots. We've been there, we've done that. After COVID, we know it's not about that. We know it's more about real connection, about intimacy, about touching each other, about to each other, about a deeper conversation. And I think we'll see the way from narcissism to altruism, and from me to collectivism, and from desire to maybe delaying desire. So that's a lot of changing patterns we're seeing in how we're going to manifestate ourselves and what we are looking for. So I think in general it's going to be a path from pleasure to purpose. And of course we'll always be looking for pleasure, but we'll be more aware of it.
Oh, fascinating. Well, can't wait to read more about that when it comes out. Thanks so much again for joining us today, Jeanneke. It's really, really interesting, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Thank you, Gemma.
Cheers. Thank you.